Hello. Morning.
Um,
Hi. So welcome. So this week we had a DEVA1 meeting, and we had a continuation of the discussion on graph neural networks and hypergraph representations of development. So we've been working on that for the last 2 weeks, working through a paper talking about the different ways that people do this. So it's a nice literature review that we're working through, and discussing ways to map biology to that, because the review itself is about hypergraph methods, but just kind of working through how you might apply that, say, like to C. elegans or some other model organism or model system. So that's been going on in the DEVA1 group, and those meetings are available on the DEVA1 channel on YouTube. So the other thing is that we are starting up our open source meetings probably the second Friday in May. So I think that's May 9th. And so that's going to come start up then. So if you're not familiar with the the open source meetings that we have, those are usually, we have at that point we'll have newly selected GSOC students, we'll have other people of interest. We'll talk about different topics in open source. It'll be an opportunity for people to give an update on their projects. So they'll have their projects. They'll be starting their projects every week. They're required to give an update. And then we'll have people, maybe if other people are interested in joining us, giving their updates on different projects. And then we usually have a feature, which is either project management related, professional development related, or something to do with open source. And so the years past, we have these meetings from years past on YouTube. So if you look up open source interest group or some variation of that, you'll get a playlist that shows all of the videos from, I think, the last 2 years we've been doing this. So we'll have that for people to look at as a template. So it starts May 9th, and it'll be at noon on Fridays, Eastern time. So usually is Eastern time as a marker, Eastern time North America, so plan accordingly. Okay. So did we want to give any updates at this point, or wait till later?
I'm here in San Diego for the California Neurotechnology Conference. This is a student-run event by all the neurotech student clubs in California. Well, a large majority of them. So a lot of UC schools together with USC.
Okay.
I believe are the hosts. I think more schools might be attending. So apologies, but I will be switching over to my phone at some point, just because I think check-in is at 8 a.m.
Okay, yeah.
So, but just trying to think if there's some good stuff in network neuroscience. Or I was kind of wondering if you've seen what was it called? Zap. ZapBench.
Oh, okay. No, I hadn't, but we can take a look at that later.
Yeah, and And of course, as usual, there was also a great, some great content from the ICTS. So in that same channel, there's some YouTube links that just say live, but hopefully they'll have switched it up at some point.
Right.
But the discussion meeting link there has more about the actual content. I mean, if you click on them, you'll see some good stuff. But just referring to a lot of work trying to infer dynamical systems from like physiology data, or
Okay.
yeah.
That sounds
And then
great.
of course Michael Heaven, but
Yeah.
some good stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. We'll take a look at that channel in a little bit. Yeah, so thanks, Morgan. Vidhi, do you have any updates or?
No updates. I was just reading through papers and have my university work going on alongside. Yeah, just nice.
That's good. Yeah, and you've been putting some good papers in the Slack, so thank you for that. Yeah. All right, so let's get started. So, first thing I wanted to point to, a couple weeks ago, Jesse talked about a group called Ecolopto, and it's a group of people. I don't know how they're structured. I know that there's some people involved from a couple of different universities, and it's basically sort of a cognitive science type interdisciplinary group. So I think they've had like a recent hackathon, and they were doing some interesting things there. So I ran across this blog post. They have a Substack called Ecolopto, and they have this blog post. What is Ecolopto? So Ecolopto likes to think deeply about the simple or mundane, and this is Ecolopto, Daniel Van Zant, and Dan Elton. Dan Elton is someone who Jesse knows personally. So science and technology advocate / critic. Daniel Van Zant is a AI and neuroscience writer and a meta science writer. So they're going to talk about this initiative. So at Ecolopto, and it's a group there, they have their videos on YouTube. You can look up Ecolopto on YouTube, and they have the videos there. And they have their they're kind of structured like us. They have their meetings, and they have their events that are open like that. At Ecolopto, we are highly multidisciplinary. So not interdisciplinary, but multidisciplinary. Technically, there's a difference. Whereas interdisciplinary is talking between disciplines, multidisciplinary is working across disciplines. And we don't really use the term multidisciplinary in this group, but we're kind of more of that, I would say, rather than interdisciplinary, although we do both. So they're multidisciplinary in that they research and talk about physics, mathematics, computer science, neuroscience, biology, medicine, and metascience. That's a lot. But basically, whatever it takes, I guess, to understand the brain. Because I think that's their focus is neuroscience and the brain, because they kind of overlap in a number of ways with that. There is an overarching theme to a lot of Ecolopto's work. However, understanding and enhancing cognitive systems is the sort of the main thrust. So the cognitive systems involves neuro and the brain, but it also involves thinking and behavior. And so that's also part of their mission. This post describes a framework we developed that ties together Ecolopto's diverse research activities. So this is just kind of talking about that framework. People have been trying to hack their brains since the first humans ate a suspicious mushroom. Today we're doing the same thing, but with better tools and fancier words. Ecolopto digs into this age-old quest from many angles, encouraging wild thinking while remaining grounded by careful scientific testing. Recently, we realized that Ecolopto's research activities can be clustered into 4 quadrants along 2 dimensions. So this is the graph I'm going to show you in a bit, and it kind of talks about this sort of space that they're in. Internal modification versus external extension, and pure science versus application. So they're thinking in terms of like, when they say extension, they mean like extending from the brain and from the body. So modifying the body, versus extended cognition, I guess. And then the role, sort of the area of science that they're working in. So either they're working in pure science, which is hypothetical deductive science, answering questions, not thinking about the applications much at all, versus application, which is always thinking about the applications, how it applies in the real world. Internal modification focuses on changing existing cognitive processes, while external extension involves augmenting them with external tools. Pure science seeks understanding, while application puts that understanding to practical use. So this is the figure here, internal modification to external extension. That's the axis on the horizontal. And then insight, which is pure science versus application, that's on the axis along the vertical. And so you can see that they form these 4 quadrants. In the first quadrant, which is internal modification and insight, we have a question, and that is, what does this modification / practice reveal about the mind? So this is where, we have like maybe some modification of a system. We like intervene in it somehow. Or we have maybe a modification of the brain or the body. And then maybe we have a practice, like, a cultural practice or a scientific practice. And then those reveal something about the mind. And, I think it's probably one of these things where they're doing formal investigations, but they're also doing kind of like self-reflection as well. So it's very broad in terms of how you ask this question. And then next over, external extension and insight or pure science. That quadrant is a question, what does X extension imply for cognition? So if you extend something, there's some implication for cognition. And so, it might be like an enhancement of cognition, or it might be some sort of extension of an idea. And so that's the idea there. And there's some implication for cognition always. And maybe there isn't, but we want to know what the effect is and what the effect size is. Internal modification and application together yields the question, what modification / practices allow people to think better? So this is where, you have, again, these modifications and practices, and instead of saying that they reveal something about the mind, they actually allow people to think better, perhaps. So this is just the application domain where, you want to know if, say, I put a brain-computer interface on, what does it allow me to do? Versus if I put some electrodes on my head or in my brain, what does it reveal about the mind? Then external extension and application together yields the following question: what extensions would allow people to think better? So how could we get people to think better? What concretely would make that happen? It could be like something as simple as a mnemonic, or it could be like a tool, a computational tool, like a program, or something like that. Or it could be some sort of brain-machine interface, or it could be some sort of training regimen or educational intervention. So that's what they're getting at here. And it's very broad because I think the initiative is very broad. So this is, they kind of go through these quadrants here. Internal modification, pure science, examines how internal manipulations to the brain reveal fundamental principles about how the mind works. These changes can be brought about by either molecules or behavioral change. Example, quantifying the effects of sleep deprivation on learning. So you have there a question or a statement. You have a set of hypotheses, and you can actually test those and get a sense of how that tells you about how the mind works. Internal modification application is concerned with designing internal manipulations to improve cognitive capabilities. So this might be like something like psychedelics enhancing creativity, fasting to enhance learning, or meditation to enhance insight. External extension / pure science uses artificial systems and tools to better understand the cognition by creating technological analogs of mental processes. So this might be where we want to understand how large language models work and the relation then between language and intelligence. So getting a handle on those artificial analogs and then seeing what they tell us about language and intelligence. Finally, external extension / application creates technologies that expand human cognitive capabilities beyond their natural limits, have memory aids to reasoning tools. So, for example, using AI to enhance scientific research, wearable devices to enhance memory, brain-computer interfaces to enhance new sensory modalities. That's how they're thinking about this. Echolopto aims to explore wild new ideas across these frontiers while maintaining scientific rigor. The stakes are high. We're talking about fundamental human capabilities, which would create autocatalytic feedback loops that change the future of humanity. So they kind of have this cybernetic aim as well, which is the part of that process of thinking and creating knowledge. If you're fascinated by these possibilities and are willing to think beyond conventional boundaries while keeping your feet planted in the solid science, we're your kind of people. The human mind remains the most interesting and important piece of matter in the universe. Understanding and enhancing it requires both wild speculation and careful analysis. So it's their bit about Echolopto. It looks like Jesse's here. So just in time for Jesse to join in. So how are you?
Okay. I missed the intro to how we got to talking about the group, but it's nice. It's good to see the discussion.
Yeah. So yeah, I just started with that blog post. They had their Medium, and I wanted to go over this. I don't know if you saw the diagram. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So why don't you give an update? You have.
Yeah. I mean, on Echolopto or other things specifically.
Anything.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Echolopto is an interesting group. There's some absolute overlap with what Cognition Futures has done and we've done in the lab, but also there's a little bit more of a biohacker bent to it. And it's interesting because the founder or like the main originator is Adi, and Adi he's a very bright and curious person, and I really enjoy. There's the sort of the salons, which are a little bit more like pop-up things. Less, it's not like every meeting we're going to meet Saturday. There's just like these talks, and I think Adi started working to develop some of his own ideas, and then also there's sort of the people mentioned in that post, and it's been an interesting experience. I don't think I'm an expert yet on anything, but it's been interesting to see where they want to go and stuff and what they're doing. And as someone who I'll put on sort of my I don't know, a particular hat of expertise. I don't know which hat it should be. It's been just an example of seeing people pursue new ideas, and also, I think we're in a very interesting era, and I think it's probably always been this way. And I defer to the older folks here who might know more history than I do about this, like directly. But it's a really interesting era for people to be able to basically try to find, like, if you say you want to find and study something, and you have, depending on what connections or networks you have, you can bring people together in ways never before now to just say, hey, I want to talk about this stuff. And having funding and connections and opportunities helps with that. But, relative to, what people want to look into and really looking into new things. I think how do I say this? I think for people really looking into how to do new things, it's an interesting time, and I think et.al and Adi are really really pursuing some interesting topics, and with a very interesting set of people. It because so much of the conversation matters with who you're having it with,
Yeah.
and being able, like, because you can have the same conversation with people that are very beholden to certain outcomes or ways things work and so on. And I think one of the biggest similarities between there and here is that there's a lot of there's in the epileptic meetings, there's been musicians and philosophers and people specializing in meditation, and like mathematicians and physicists too. So they're striving for that. I always throw back to like OG Macy conferences, and like actually bringing people in the room from different specialties or backgrounds, which inspired. I mean, it happens here all the time. It happens in like a lot of the set society ethics tech stuff was designed to do that too. So it's nice, and there's a lot being formed there. I think that's one of the first essays that I've seen where they're trying to, some of the leaders of the group, and Dan Eltonstone's I've known for a while. We met back in like 2017 or 16, or yeah, at a AI ethics conference. So, and I mentioned Dan a few times here, but it's just an interesting group, and I'm really happy to be a part of them and see where they go. There's so much. I can only say so much, and I only know so much. But like, they're an interesting follow for sure. I know Addie's working on sort of, and they gave a talk last week about they're sort of developing a language or considering like things about language in general and how it relates to senses, or like, can you make a language based off of things you may not normally associate with it, like sensory inputs or olfactions, smell, and kind of trying to break down these elements of what is it that what is going into you, what are these frameworks or lenses or set of affordances or whatever that come up when you're trying to explore the space in this way and going from there. And that's one of Addie's current projects. In the to use my framework that I've developed in like the JoPro sense, that Addie's project is that. And there isn't really quite a differentiated working group. There's not like a JoPro working group level. Here's what this group of people is focusing on to make this language come in yet. But it's sort of, in the process of distilling these things that will be crystallized eventually into a working group or a project at hand. There's certainly people doing their own thing and doing research. But it's sort of et.al is a much at a different developmental stage than like this lab, for example. This lab's like very established in its own ways and things, and like just decades of it. So it's different. It's a different thing, and it's a different process. And because I've been doing so much writing and lately for some other things that I'll get into in a few moments if we have time, I'm developing my familiarity with how to communicate from these vantage points of like organizational development and leadership and strategy, or strategy and mentorship for innovators, which is one of the other things that I'm doing right now. And it's an interesting time to see all this happening. And I could see there's some kind of a joint event at some point where we all have something and talk about stuff. Like we had a conversation about affordances, as an interesting tangent and segue, et.al, there's been talk in one of their discussions about the brain-inspired complexity stuff. I think we've mentioned it here before, but brain-inspired, I think it's Paul Middlebrook is the guy.
Yeah.
Is leading a tour of the Krakauer Santa Fe Institute's complexity papers. And he's trying to find people to talk about the papers and go through them. And I've attended a few, and it's interesting. But there's sort of this overlap of like complexity and like these sort of. I'm a particular fan and have a soft spot or admiration is a better term. When people are really trying to both understand old concepts and trying to make some actual new things in the world, like to me that's a fascinating process to me. And not just sort of make a product, but like push something into a different degree of understanding. And that's definitely something that Addie and et.al and I think the authors of the other post are curious about too. So that's a nice thing. That's on that. I can update on a number of other things. I don't know how much time we have or else we want to cover today, so I can interject appropriately.
Why don't we go ahead with your updates?
Okay. The easiest way, or well, one of the best ways to start this, I suppose, will be kind of just framing what's ahead. There's a lot that has happened, and I think the most coherent way to communicate this right now, and I might share my screen in a moment if I can get something set up. But essentially, there's two projects three, I suppose. There's two sort of JoPro-driven projects that are absolutely collaborations here, and anybody who wants to contribute to them, you're welcome to do so. And then in a big inclusive sense, the summer cohort, and I have not written a piece about what does that mean to anybody who's watching. What is this summer cohort? You talk about summer of code. Um, uh, the summer cohort itself is like a whole. I kind of feel bad because I'm personally very excited that it contains all the things it does contain now, but I know it's kind of a lot. But basically, there's 2 projects that I've kind of generated, and they have a little bit of a backstory. Like I realize like they're literally a byproduct of everything I've been through, and then also they're kind of spin-offs from my time at UCSD, and my time as like the capstone projects that I tried to do there, and some of the coursework that I did there. Like they've put me in position to like realize a few things that it's like, okay, it's time to do this. So those 2 projects are they're sort of they're interwoven, but they're quite separate. Like one of them is data and direction, which is essentially data ethics and responsible AI focused. But I want it to be out into it's a little bit more of the tech. It's more technical, the 2 projects, and it's based in data science. Okay, but it's very much about ethics, human-centered AI, responsible AI. We robot people. Like there's an event. Oh, I better start sharing my screen now because it makes a lot more sense to do that. Oh, I see my computer restarted, so that's why some of my stuff is this way. So bear with me for another a moment. Okay. Hopefully, you know how like you set up all this stuff and make things like kind of public facing, and then it's time to like talk about it and like to see if everything like you're going to do the presentation and then the PowerPoint and projector breaks.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's like I'm hoping that doesn't happen here. There's things that have to come up here that are to be written and about to be published here too, but we're just going to do this for now. This is the announcement. I have to update on depending on what happened. But let's talk about these 2 things. So data and direction, what is it? And I'm looking to sort this out a little bit more, but like what it is right now, it's mostly you can see it here. Like this is the main hub of what we have going on. There's more posts to be published soon here, but like it's the one about a main thing we'll be doing in this group is looking at like data tools and these things that are going on in like how do you probably some core aspects of data science. Like yes, we'll talk a little bit about cleaning data and in the basics and getting the data pipeline and going from your unclean data to a data product, like the fundamental stuff, yes. But what I'm really interested in talking about, and what's been really cool, because as you notice, there's also I have an internship here. Seeing applications so far to this has been very interesting because for the people that get what I'm trying to do, they're very appreciative of how I'm trying to set this up. Because I basically, I want to be grounded in data science, but I want to look at the ethics and I want to look at I want to be able to go to events like this. Like this is an event here in Boston, and we're not presenting at this event, but as like a social opportunity, I'm going to show up here and talk to people. And we're going to talk about what they're doing, and it's just it's a symposium on kind of their computing, ethics of computing, and they have all these like interesting topics about like governance and ethics. There's Josh Tenenbaum, who I mentioned on many different fronts, but never in AI ethics before. So, he does a ton of stuff with human cooperation. and multi-agent learning, and he's a cognitive scientist. And it's like, hell yeah, I can go to a free event down the road here and talk about this with people. But then also like actual technology, civic engagement, generative AI, future democracy. Like these are the kind of things I definitely want to talk about in the group. And in this project, we want to go through the technical side of it, and then the direction or like the other part of it is essentially how does this shape decision making, or how does this make what is the process of signing off on this algorithm or this model? How's the model being built? But what are the implications? And a little bit more of it's not just data science and coding in a vacuum. It's coming from the standpoint of we're selecting directions for how to go with things when we implement models, or thinking about how to regulate them and everything else. So it's a little bit more of a holistic take. It's very obviously a like society ethics tech group. Oh, I need to update this old logo. Oh, this whole page is. That's what I mean. Like now you go through it again and you see these things where like this is not currently on hiatus. It's very much active, and the page structure's wrong, so I need to fix that on the website. But that's the way it goes, you finally present it and you find the things that you thought you fixed. But it's a very much society ethics tech under that banner. Like that's something that for those who don't know, like that's something that Bradley kind of gave me the green light to make, I don't know, in 2021 or so. And it was just an idea at the time, and then it became a set of people. It became a working group. It became a team, or it was a loose idea for a long time, and then people came around it and did a lot of things periodically. Not a whole lot. Maybe like once or twice a year we do a few things like for Nick or other stuff. But there was enough over time, and people like shout out to I think Valeria stuff is here. Yeah, Valeria Schnake was one of like the original people that ever made me go down this path. And she graduated recently with like law and tech stuff. So it's just this cool. She's a grad student, a law student and future lawyer, and a lawyer now, I guess, in Chile, and just like I'm doing this to say that I think SET and this project are examples of how, like, if you stay with something over time with an idea and leading a group of people or trying to hold space for people, you can have really cool things that come from it. And it evolved in different formats. So this is the latest version of it. And please follow data extraction at substack.com and all that stuff for actual updates, because I want to have a few opportunities. There's be in-person events and meetups, and then more like actual data tools, the fundamentals, and like what do you do, much more applied things there. So that's sort of that project. Are there any questions or comments before I move on to the other one?
So we're like, what is the sort of the meat of this? Is this kind of like just like recommendations, or at this point just kind of like this Substack discussion, or how are you engaging people basically?
Right now, and what I want some of the, like, for interns or people to, in terms of what people can do right now, where I want to go with it. What people can, well, a lot of right now, it'll basically be a discussion-oriented group, but I want there to be one of the things in the internship program is that I want people to get used to making public and forward-facing material. So yes, there will be a lot of writing blog posts and articles, like as a main thing that we do. That's what I really want to do. I don't want to have a discussion group for this particular project that meets once a week or a research read. I don't want to make it like sort of a cognition futures, which is very exploratory and then not really output focused. This is sort of that on the other side. Like I want it to be output focused in terms of making these like kind of lower more accessible front-facing artifacts. And then over time, there's certain other like bigger projects I want to develop. Like I want to investigate. There's a bunch of frameworks. Like data tools is a very, or actually data nutrition labels is like kind of a generic um, uh, it's a label. It's a simple thing in one glance, and then at another level, you get to see like their research. You get to see like this framework. I think is one of the latest things that they published. Yeah, this is from last year, but like they're working to sort out this broader framework. And I would love I want to be able to discuss and understand these kinds of frameworks. Maybe we eventually, you know, um, do some comparative analysis of different frameworks. Maybe we try to make some of our own frameworks. Maybe we identify different things. There's a lot of reports and stuff there too. I do eventually want to make some publications to like the conferences that are strictly around it, ethics things, the facts, the ones that are focused on these topics, and eventually be robot. The robot was kind of I wasn't able to travel for that. Let's say this year, to put it lightly, and but like I would love to actually be a functional contributor to the We Robot conference. I think that's one of the most critical areas. For those who've kind of been around me long enough, I have a certain reverence for people trying to do the work in all of this space, and We Robot especially, where it's like you're asking people to regulate functionally technology that's at an impossibly different movement rate, speed of rate of movement than comprehension at large or regulation. So I don't know that I'm going to train a lot of folks who can support the We Robot crowd and the legislators and the law folks trying to do something with what's going on. But maybe that's a sub goal of sorts or a nice thing that I'm trying to do. But yeah, it's like at its core right now, and this will depend. Like some of the applicants, if they want to do some really cool and that stuff, like wow, like I'm kind of certain people in given the space and what support I can give them here, like they could do some really cool stuff, really in depth things. But I think the majority of like the internship and what we're having right now is just a lot of fundamental stuff, a lot of kind of building out. Hey, so we're coming on. Here's the data science fundamentals. Here's data ethics. Here's some current events around it. Let's have the discussion internally, and then let's continue to make these things that other people can interface with. There is an open science, a little bit of a public science, a little bit of science communication emphasis to it, because I'm completely not interested at all in talking about this behind closed doors and in a vacuum. It's like I don't think that's sort of like, I don't want to have abstracts and I don't even dismiss it about, like, I think it's a great place for like a abstract philosophical discussion. I want to have philosophical discussion in this group, but the action for bias, or the bias for action, or whatever you want to say, is slanted towards, okay, we're going to be outputting this stuff because I think that's how I want to handle it, and I think it's important to handle some of this that way. So I don't know if that answers the question very well, but that's kind of where things are, and I think that will change, after like this summer. So this is like the grand, maybe even a soft opening, honestly, but it's sort of like just coming out of the incubator, I suppose. Okay, anything else before I go on to the other project? I don't want to ramble too much more. Yeah.
I've seen references to this data nutrition project. So could you go talk a little bit about that and who's running that? And
Yeah. This is the front page. Basically, this is sort of in the data pipeline. They're saying they're trying in a really shorthand way that in the data pipeline you have your data set, you have you're looking for a data set, okay, and then you get a data set, and I'm kind of jumping along here, but let's say you're searching for a data set at this time, an existing one, and then you're going to pre-process it and develop your model and deploy it. What they want to do is in between, I don't know, selection and where you start fooling around with it, let's say, they want to put something here so that this process is more streamlined, because it's sort of like, especially for big data sets, you get inside, you start kind of mess around with it and do your preliminary stuff. It 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 can be a lot of investment. So that and it's sort of a they want to put something here that helps that process at a very high level. It's just they're trying to facilitate greater efficiency and maybe things like, I don't know about accountability, but like transparency and effectiveness in data sets. And before you even get into it, like what can you know up front that will be helpful for you to identify a good data set? That's at a very high level what they're trying to do. At a much deeper level, incomplete, misunderstood historical problematic data can negatively influence AI algorithms, right? Algorithms matter in some of the data they're trained on. There's a missing step in the pipeline, though. Assessing the data set based on standard quality measures that are both qualitative and quantitative. So they're working on, they're trying to basically put as much useful information upfront as possible. Now, it cuts a little bit both ways in the sense that it's kind of a nice framework tool, almost a little bit kind of like frontier mappy, but not quite. In the sense of it's trying to provide you a framework of things that you can understand if you are making a data set and you want to give it a label. It puts a certain I don't want to say rhetorical pressure, but it puts a certain pressure on you. Is how is this going to look on the label? Like excuse me. It will help you think about what someone else needs to use this product or this data set or this this artifact that you're creating, a data set. How will it help other? How can I make this so other people can interface with it effectively? And I think that's a great thing to do. But then they have, like, in their actual straight up research stuff, they have the clear documents we just showed before. There's a very active arm. Actually, that reminds me, I reached out to them a month or so ago, and they responded to me, and I haven't followed up with them. There's other things I will cover today, so I don't want to waste too much more time on that. But it's a really cool project, and it's sort of, again, in this a bit intermediary. Like, it's not really this isn't like doing this isn't about crafting an algorithm or setting a model. This is about this like meta data science work, if you will, or meta science proper, whatever you like. One of the things that I haven't said this yet, I'm trying to incorporate this language in the data indirection project. Like, it is like there is a meta scientific lens to data indirection that I really like, and I think is important, because it's like, how do we talk about what we're doing, and how do we measure it or try to make it interfaceable with other things going on. So if you make all these products, just like in open source sustainability stuff, you make all these products, you don't know to talk about it, you don't document it, you spend a lot of effort and it dies and nobody uses it. It's like, okay, well, like, you can give yourself a pat on the back about it, but then it's effectively like nothing happened. So I think these are all like kind of efforts to make those points of interface a little more higher impact, or to waste, or in a simple way, just like waste less energy by saying, hey, if we put our energy into this thing, it might save collectively more or enable more in the longer term. It's imperfect, but that's kind of what we're dealing with. Like there is not a data nutrition label. There is not a standards and association anywhere like the FDA and the United States government says you have to have this on your data. Like just so people get it. Like we're comparing a very matured, established governing structure, and it's questionable or not standards and measures and ways of evaluating to something that doesn't really exist in the same way. There are things, but like not that level. So anyway, that's kind of what that is. And then if I still have, I don't know how much time I have, but I might just mention the other project briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just like show and tell day for whatever we're working on for a while. But cool. So the other one, I'm just gonna close these out for now. From here to there, and yeah, I'm working on the logo. I don't really know how to do it right yet. It's been steps, it's been all those things for now, but for now it's just this. Is this gonna work for me? Yeah, I think it's gonna work here too. From here to there is not technical in the way that data is, the data direction is. This is about, I'll show you this in a second, but at a high level, this is sort of all, like we've talked, for those who are just joining the web, you may not realize it, but like a major thing that we talk about or have talked about historically, I've been kind of MIA this year, so I'm coming back now, is like professional development and how do you act as an early career researcher, or even how do you act in a leadership role? How do you act? What do you do when you're trying to participate in or lead people or otherwise foster spaces of innovation? Like when you're trying to build stuff, because it's different. Like if you haven't, I say this as someone who like a good chunk of my early career in life, like I wasn't around innovation spaces growing up. I was around like some blue collar stuff. I was around like very standard corporate established jobs where like here's what you do. And when you're not in that space, or even if you're in a as we've kind of I've talked to more and more people in the innovation panel, but like if you're in sort of these hybrid bigger corporate spaces, like obviously Google, sure, but also like names like GE and these other that like technology, or even like pharmaceuticals and other places where you're making things, like it's different. There's a different set of things there. This project comes from many years of discussions with Bradley and others here, and it comes from, I mean, my interest in mentorship and my interest in strategy and leadership in these spaces. And what I really want to do, I guess as good as anything to go here, what I really want to do is sort of like across different levels of development, like not just where you are in your career, but sort of like there are certain things that are much higher level in terms of setting broader visions, in terms of setting agendas and strategically navigating towards either what like the market or the economy or whatever it's doing. There are these bigger macro trends that have their own space, and that's kind of what this is about. There's leading teams doing the stuff. Like I've been fortunate the last several years to kind of sit in on people making hardware, people making software, people trying to do AI work, and like how do you, if you're trying to make a product, what do you do? Like how do you deal in a startup environment, an industry environment, in nonprofits? What if it's just a group of your friends or college teammates or colleagues, and you really care about something, and you meet, a couple times a month, and it's just you talking about it, and you want to do more than talk about it. Like that's that's what a lot of what we're talking about here is. I know it doesn't sound like it, but like a lot of what we've done here, a lot of things in other groups, a lot of people trying to just make something, make an app or make a framework. That's what they've been doing, right? And it's not as prestigious as saying, "Oh, I am, I work at NVIDIA and I'm developing the next generation of this hardware or whatever." Like, no, it's not. But there's different things at each of these stages that matter, and there's like super, at the early career level, all that's really here so far, like this is all early career. This is kind of visionary, but like, what do you do? What do you do when you're the first time speaker on a panel? What do you do when you're applying to do a summer of code? Like these sort of, when you're just getting into the space of innovation or creation, what is it like? And what I really want to do is have all this, a lot of things that I've seen say like, "Oh, this is exclusively for CEOs, and if you're a CEO, you need to know this." And it's like, yeah, but like I want these to be able to talk to each other. I want there to be some overlap in saying, when you're in this role, you can think about how to communicate here and how to develop people here. I don't want it to be. A lot of these things are dealt in isolation, and I find that to be like okay, but then it arbitrarily makes esoteric the other layers of things. And I feel like, well, if you're gonna, bring someone into this seriously, and my point of view honestly is like we need people to innovate things very desperately. But if we don't teach them how to do it or how to relate to each other and how to cultivate each other in doing it, then you're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. Like not to the degree that things need to happen. But outside of that take, I suppose, I'm gonna. There are other things like there's book reviews, podcast interviews. I have in my hand some microphones right now, and I have a lot. I'm trying to do, but like so many of our discussions are really great decisions we've had here. So for a long time, I said, "Hey, what about like a discussion series about professional development stuff?" And it's like that's happening now finally. So I'll do that. The current event stuff, all these things I want to talk about too. But this is a little bit more of a, I don't know, like I've been, whoops, let me do that right now. I've spent a lot more time in the, let's say, I don't want to say consulting, like a little bit too self-congratulatory space, but like in sort of advising and coaching and developing stuff space. And I want to do more in that space. I've wanted to do that for a long time. Throwback to even like when I was the Geneseo Opportunities for Leadership Development program, like seeing those things in action, how much that like gave me the space to think about this stuff at an earlier stage when I was absolutely a younger man and just getting started to think like there was a space to talk about some of these things, and like how do you run a meeting and how do you deal with like what is your leadership approach, like how are you going to handle stuff, and getting people a sense of agency about that stuff is huge. So there's a lot I want to do here, and I'm hoping to incorporate a little bit of this into like for a long time, and to go all the way back here, like it's kind of been coming soon, but it's been it's much further along than it has been, and so this is part of that, and I'm looking forward to like what does it really mean right now? It'll be a little more focused stuff, like instead of kind of just having these freestyle rant talks or rants. Sometimes they're rants, I admit that, but like instead of having freestyle talks on our open source meetings, I'll have, hey, look at this article that I or the team or whatever will have written, and we'll talk about it, and we can maybe have a little more constructive discussion about it. That's something that will happen this summer, and then like I have interviews from the innovation panel from NICWIC that I will be conducting soon, and I want to get used to talking about that. Like I want to have much more conversations about this. Like this is one of my sort of interesting passions in life has always been this sort of teaching, and how do you enable people to do, I would say, great things, but like to do important new things. And I'm happy that this project has sort of taken off a little bit. I want to also make kind of an internship type thing for this. I don't really know what to call it because a data ethics intern, like that's a thing. I'm not making that up. You know, like it's maybe a bit niche to actually think it's actually data ethics and not just you're a data science. We'll do some data science work for us, and yeah, we'll talk about other things. Like this is really focused on the interdisciplinary stuff, which is great. But for here, I'm a little bit less sure how to structure this, but I really want to involve other people into it for sure. So yeah, that's basically what that project is. There's a lot more to come with it. These are all kind of just these soft launches, I suppose, but we are doing things here, and I'm recruiting people for it. And I'm if anyone's excited about these things, just reach out. We can talk about it. And then I guess, did I? Let me see something else. And then there's I mean, we don't. I won't. It's taken up a lot of time, so I won't go into the summer cohort too much. But basically, it's built around Google Summer Code, and we are, in the process. I'm sure you're getting them too, brother. But you're like, hey, where are you in the process of evaluating our proposals? And it's like, well, we are reviewing things, and we'll get back to you about it. But that Google Summer Code is sort of a long-time centerpiece for what this lab's been in the summertime season. And I don't know if Riley wants to say any more in depth about that, but that's going to be a lot built around that and around that structure. And the cohort is sort of the broader. The cohort itself is sort of like for people that don't necessarily get the Google funding, for people that want to do a JSON project, people that want to come in and talk about join the open source Friday meeting to just talk about like open source life and like some of the professional development stuff. And I might try to throw in some specific things for like data and direction or the leadership project too, but it's just the whole apparatus as a whole, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun as always, and from what I've seen the proposals, like some very promising proposals so far, and I'll defer to Bradley if you want to say any more than that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for that overview, and I think this will be a nice addition and dovetail to the open source meetings when we start up again. So I would like to have a weekly feature of this type. We can kind of go through, and you have the freedom to kind of do what you want each week. So I think it'll always be a good conversation.
I wanna really I will reply to that. And I don't know if you want to say more, Bradley, but I respect the question. I just want to know more. What do you mean, like motivated in what sense? Because I could say a whole bunch. I know what actually answers your question.
Whatever you're posting, what you post and stuff. Sometimes people start with things, but then we often stop doing things. But what keeps you motivated to continue it, or how did you start it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely true. And there's sort of a few different answers here. The like really appealing answer, I think, that a lot of people are sort of almost easy to say as like, well, it's just something I'm really passionate about, and my passion fuels me, and I care about it as much as why I do it. And that's true, but like a maybe more real version of that is I think there are probably in somewhere in the double digits of abandoned or derelict or just projects and blogs that I've started or that have failed, quote unquote failed. And it that's okay. Like I think sometimes you hear things like fail fast and fail upward or whatever, and yeah, you can do that, but like it's really just about there's a great I'm actually writing something about something in this lab, and Bradley has said many times, momentum is sometimes more important than progress. Or there was a great quote somewhere I saw that basically the same thing about like iteration. Like iteration is more important than like a perfect idea. And it's motivation, but also like the motivation I think for me comes from earnestly showing up and thinking about what do you want to do here? Like if you can show up over time and address the question that you want to solve or whatever it is that you want to do, if you can repeatedly show up and go to the space of earnest inquiry about something, that will tell you where to go. And especially for people making this is why I appreciate the question, especially in the context of trying to innovate or do new things. Because if you're trying to just reproduce something, then it's a totally different situation. But if you are trying to make new things, or you're earnestly curious in ways that people don't talk about something currently, or you don't like a situation, like you want to change something, you showing up and putting effort in may not look the same, and the outcome and the results may not follow a standard pattern. So I think it's a very important question. And it's sort of along the way, I think what great mentors do is help you identify what it is that actually matters to you, or what are the goals that are available, and what is a landscape for you to work on them. And I think it's sort of a delicate act of identifying what you can do, but then also what is there to be done, and kind of connecting the legitimate concern or interest, whatever the internal spark is, to sort of the intermediary spaces of what you can do in the world, to the actual direction of where you want to go with it. Like that's a super involved and complicated high level thing. Like I'm putting a lot of parts there, but to boil it to boil it down again is sort of like it's really just showing up a lot, and you can say believing in yourself. Like there's a lot of this, I don't know, you gotta be really strong willed or whatever to make or innovate things. And that's probably true in some ways. But it can also just be like I'm committed to holding a meeting and talking about this with other people once or twice a week or a month, and letting things come from that. It's not, it can take many different forms, but I think it's sort of identifying that you have something that really matters to you or is interesting, and finding ways to get community around it, or finding ways to share the journey, or finding ways just to, sometimes you have to go by yourself too. So yeah, I know that's sort of a lot of different approaches to it, but it changes over time. What you feel like you can do evolves as well. So it's kind of just a lot of listening to what that is, I find.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. That was great. I'm glad to see that you've got these new projects. So you have your JoePro site, and that's where you're hosting some of that. And then you have the Substack. I don't know how many Substacks you have. What is the number?
I've decided for these projects specifically, and in my sort of framework for what is a project and working group and everything else, the working groups are just like the broader things, And I made the JoePro website sort of a front page to show other people all the stuff going on, like almost like an outlet, like things for this lab, things for platforms, things for the groups and the partners that we have that are trying to do stuff. But Substack specifically for these two projects seemed on point. Like I'm not making a Substack for like cognition features or for like society ethics tech or whatever. But these projects are very output and like deliverable oriented to that scale. So those are just the two. Those are just the two ones. I have like a personal Substack, which I don't know, like if I'm gonna write anything there, and one for Joe Pro to basically be another outlet for the website. Like it's basically just there's so much like I'm backlogged with stuff, and I'm getting help to like sort out where things need to go and how they're released. But it's really just those two, and realizing that too, like another point to the question that was raised a few moments ago, like part of it too is like you have to build some kind of external system that facilitates, at least in my experiences, like you're gonna have to find some way to have external like self-maintaining maintaining the system externally somehow. like it's like unless you want it just to be like a personal set of writings, which you don't need anything that's just on you. But if you're trying to do things in the world, you have to find some system of having things be anchored somewhere, and ideally there can be a little bit of a homeostasis around it. And so I'm saying that because the Substacks, we're not always there. They're not just like, oh, I wanna make content. They're there now because these ideas have been in development for decades. At least the leadership one, and maybe half a decade, or at least the last 2 years of my degree, that was the data and direction one. So like these things are not just a bunch of ideas I had; they're refined and iterated over time, and the Substacks are just those two. So at least main ones right now. So yeah, and you can just go to the website and I have them hopefully linked there.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Bradley, for listening to all that.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. I look forward to maybe working on some of this summer in open source, open science, whatever that meeting is. Yeah, that'd be great. So I know that Morgan is at the California Neuroscience Conference or Neurotech Conference or whatever it is. But this week, there was another conference. We talked about this last week. There was ICLR, which is the sort of maybe like an applied version of NeurIPS. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but so ICLR 2025, the 13th International Conference on Learning Representations. But this is the website ICLR, so this is it's in person in Singapore. So we have the in-person component, but I think there's stuff online. Definitely, we can look at maybe some of the workshops and the schedule to see what that looks like. They also have their papers, like blog posts, workshop proposals on openreview.net. Okay, so this is the Wikipedia page on ICLR. Thank you, Morgan, for posting this. It's, it happens all over the world, actually. And so, yeah, it started right after ImageNet. So in 2013, they had their first one. And so these are one of the 3 primary conferences of high impact in machine learning and artificial intelligence research. It was actually Jan LeCun was one of the originators of the conference. Of course, they have their open peer review and open review, and then the workshops and everything else. So let's take a look at what they do here. So the schedule, here's the schedule. They have some invited talks. Last Wednesday, I guess, They started the conference. They had some invited talks, building safe and robust AI systems. Another invited talk on overflow, building safe and robust AI systems. Then you had a bunch of oral sessions. They had these birds of a feather sessions. So this one was towards tokenizer-free end-to-end architectures, large language models in the public sector, AI for mathematics and theorem proving, which we've talked about in this meeting, which are very fascinating, that area. Agent research in the real world, an Expo talk panel, another Expo talk panel on Ant-Inclusion AI, a fully open source project for large language models from reinforcement learning reasoning to agents. That sounds really interesting. We talked about ant swarm intelligence or ant colony optimization in a previous meeting, I believe. So that's kind of an application of reinforcement learning. This one here, invited talk, framework, prototype, definition, and benchmark. And then we have, the next day, Thursday. Let's see. This invited talk, pursuing the nature of intelligence. That looks interesting. I wonder if they have an abstract. Okay, they have the abstract here. So in this talk, we will try to clarify different levels and mechanisms of intelligence for historical, scientific, mathematical, and computational perspectives. From the evolution of intelligence in nature, from phylogenetic to ontogenetic, to societal and artificial intelligence, we will try to shed light on how to understand the true nature of the seemingly dramatic advances in the technologies of machine intelligence in the past decade. We achieve this goal by developing a principled mathematical framework to explain the practice of deep learning from the perspective of compressive data encoding and decoding. This framework not only reveals true nature, hence limitations of the current practice, but it also provides principled guidelines to develop more complete and more efficient learning architectures and systems. Eventually, we will clarify the difference in relationship between knowledge and intelligence, which may guide us to pursue the goal of developing systems with true intelligence. That was a talk. So they kind of focus on this phylogenetic, ontogenetic, and societal aspect of intelligence. We talked about the phylogenetic aspect a couple weeks ago. We talked about like bird intelligence versus mammalian intelligence and the sort of the underpinnings of all that. So it's kind of an interesting approach, bringing that into this kind of conference. Let's see. There's a social women in machine learning, another social AI safety and practice, bridging theory and real world challenges. Any other talks here? This one, Eureka, evaluating and understanding large foundation models. This one here, human attention is not all you need. What? Were you laughing at this one? Okay.
Yeah,
oh.
I didn't catch it either. I don't know what it was about.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Let's see what this is. Access denied. Well, I guess we'll never know. Then Friday they had some socials. Let's see. Oh, open source decentralized AI community social. What else? Training language models in academia. Challenger calling. There's another one down here. Well, there's AI multi-agent systems in enterprise, running research and real-world applications, machine learning for digital twins, open-endedness, world models, and the automation of innovation. That sounds really interesting. That was an invited talk. That abstract is the pursuit of artificial superintelligence requires a shift from narrow objective optimization towards embracing open-endedness, a research paradigm pioneered in AI by Stanley, Lehman, and Clune. We talked about the open-endedness work and the work on like creativity and that sort of thing. That is focused on systems that generate endless sequences of novel but learnable artifacts. In this talk, I will present our work on large-scale foundation world models that can generate a wide variety of diverse environments that can in turn be used to train more general and robust agents. Furthermore, I will argue that the connection between open-endedness and foundation models points towards automating innovation itself. This convergence is already yielding practical results, enabling self-referential self-improvement loops, self-referential self-improvement for automated prompt engineering, automated red teaming, and AI debate in large language models. And it hints at a future where AI drives its own discoveries. So it's interesting, they kind of mention open-endedness, but then they kind of hint at this sort of, these loops or self-improvement loops, which are, I assume, closed loop systems. They could be open loop systems, I suppose, but it's just kind of an interesting connection there. All right. And then this is the same invited talk, I guess. It's the same invited talk. I don't know why they have it twice, but okay. This is Saturday, so there were some workshops. So the workshops start at 5:30 p.m. Singapore time. So you had machine learning, multi-scale processes, XAI for science. This is from understanding model behavior to discovering new scientific knowledge. The second workshop on foundation models in the wild. Towards agentic AI for science, hypothesis generation, comprehension, quantification, and validation. Workshop on human AI coevolution, which is the abstract for that, is this workshop aims to build a multidisciplinary research community around the emerging field of human AI coevolution, or HAIC. I guess that's a new term. To understand the feedback loops that emerge from the continuous and long-term human AI interactions that exist in the world. As AI systems have become more prevalent and have been present in society over longer periods, scholars from diverse fields and methodologies have come to focus on HAIC and its importance for system architecture, human feedback, regulation, and other domains. Through this workshop, we hope to lay a collaborative foundation for this research agenda. To achieve this, we will organize expert talks from academia and industry, dynamic panel discussions, interactive breakout sessions, and networking opportunities. Drawing on our diverse experience organizing related workshops at leading conferences in machine learning, natural language processing, HCI, and related fields. So that's a kind of an interesting approach to that topic. This other workshop, modular, collaborative, and decentralized deep learning. Another very interesting topic. So this one is a workshop website. I guess the content is not available unless you register, which makes sense. But so I don't know. But we can just get a sense of what's going on here. This is for modular, collaborative, and decentralized deep learning. The increasing complexity of modern machine learning models exposes the limitations of the traditional monolithic approach to their development, raising concerns about cost and sustainability. This workshop challenges this approach by advocating for a new paradigm based on modular design and functional specialization. Inspired by principles from software engineering, we envision a future where models are composed of independently trainable modules, enabling asynchronous development, incremental updates, and cross-task generalization through composability. This shift towards modularity unlocks new possibilities for collaborative model development, where researchers can contribute specialized modules, combine existing modules, participate in decentralized training schemes. By embracing modularity, we can democratize deep learning research, enabling smaller teams and institutions to contribute to the development of powerful and efficient models. Furthermore, modularity promises to enhance model interpretability and maintainability, paving the way for more robust and efficient AI systems. This workshop aims to accelerate the transition towards a more collaborative and sustainable future for deep learning. So basically a focus on modularity, composability, generalization, etc. So sort of these meta topics or meta organizational principles. Oh, and then let's see. Did want to go over the workshop website actually. So this is the workshop on modularity for collaborative, decentralized, and continual deep learning. I don't know if they had the papers on the website, but these are the contributors. And I don't see any of the papers, so probably on the Open Review site. Okay, so yeah, then there's this workshop, Integrating Generative and Experimental Platforms for Biomolecular Design. This also has a workshop website. Biomolecular design through artificial engineering of proteins, ligands, and nucleic acids holds immense promise for addressing pressing medical, industrial, and environmental challenges. While generative machine learning has shown significant potential in this area, a palpable disconnect exists with experimental biology. And that is, many machine learning research efforts prioritize static benchmark performance, potentially sidelining impactful biological applications. So basically, the way we do benchmarking for these kind of machine learning algorithms actually aren't suitable for biological applications, where you need to do real-time analysis, or the benchmarks simply aren't sufficient. We run into this problem in DevoWorm all the time, trying to work with embryos and other types of biological imaging. And so, you know, benchmarking is sort of relative, right? You have things that, you know, a lot of the benchmarks we have are for like image data sets that are standard images. You know, sometimes they have very easy features, easy to segment, things like that. And in biology, we have kind of the opposite situation. And in fact, our benchmarks, our useful benchmarks there, involve things like, you know, having a heavy degree of noise. Sometimes we need to take noise into account as part of the signal. There are all sorts of, you know, things, complexities, edge cases that are, you know, important for the benchmark to pick up on, that if we were in a normal situation, like, you know, a normal benchmark for image processing, we would, you know, not capture it. So that's an interesting observation. This workshop seeks to bridge this gap by bringing computationalists and experimentalists together, catalyzing a deeper interdisciplinary discourse. Together, we will explore the strengths and challenges of generative machine learning in biology, experimental integration of generative machine learning, and biological problems ready for machine learning. So you have to define your problems, find a data set, and then those problems are very hard to, you know, it's not like a typical applied machine learning problem. It's not as packaged. Sometimes you get, you know, single kinds of analyses you want to do, but the biological problems are deeper than that and often more open-ended in the sense that it just raises more questions. And that's fine, but it's not, you know, you can't use a standard production pipeline for that. It's quite a bit different. To attract high quality and diverse research, we partnered with Nature Biotechnology for a special collection, and we created dedicated tracks for in silico machine learning research and hybrid machine learning experimental biology research. Our lineup features emerging leaders as speakers and renowned scientists as panelists, encapsulating a spectrum from high throughput experimentation and computational biology to generative machine learning. With a diverse organizing team and backed by industry sponsors, We dedicate the workshop to pushing the boundaries of machine learning's role in biology. So this is the work. This is the GEM workshop. The speakers are here. So George Church is one of the speakers. Frank Noé is one of the speakers. Some other people here. So yeah, and then I don't know if they have papers. This is GEM 2024. This is generative and experimental perspectives for biomolecular design. So they're actually doing like they did one in 2024, I guess. So this is their workshop. So this is where they're kind of putting they put the papers from the proceedings in a journal. So this one was in Cell Systems. The next year, 2025, would be in Nature Biotechnology. I don't know if they have the link to the actual special issue. I don't think so. But yeah. So yeah, this is cool. And then the call for papers here, they had a call for papers where they had 2 tracks, machine learning and biology. The machine learning track was dealt with papers that introduced generative advancements for biomolecular design with in silico results, basically, using generative AI to produce computational results, inverse design, modeling, and in silico benchmarks. And then the biology track, which is biological problems and data, right, for generative machine learning and or employment of machine learning for biomolecular design with wet lab experimental results. And that would be, the focus there would be biological problems apt for machine learning applications, high throughput data generation methods, adaptive experimental design, and again, in silico benchmarks and oracles. So. Okay, so that's, and then, continuing with the workshops, there was a robot learning workshop towards robots with human level abilities. This workshop, will synthetic data finally solve the data access problem? And this is a workshop website as well. This one, accessing large-scale and high-quality data has been shown to be one of the most important factors to the performance of machine learning models. So this is where you need to have real data to train the model to verify the results, etc. Recent work showed that large language models can be greatly benefit from training with massive data from diverse, domain-specific sources and aligning with user intention. However, the use of certain data sources can trigger privacy, fairness, copyright, and safety concerns. The impressive performance of generative artificial intelligence popularized by the usage of synthetic data, and many recent works suggest guided synthesization, I guess, can be useful for both general purpose and domain-specific applications. So I guess there's this idea that you can use synthetic data to guide or to supervise training, which is interesting. I mean, the synthetic data usually use it to fill in the gaps where you don't have data. You might use it as a way to sort of train in a pattern to the algorithm, but this is where they're actually kind of suggesting almost like a supervised learning component for this synthetic data instead of maybe like data labels or something like that. For example, you et al. 2024, she et al. 2024, Hough et al. 2024 demonstrate promising preliminary results in synthesizing private-like data, while Wu et al. 2024 highlight existing gaps and challenges. As techniques like self-instruct, self-alignment, those 2 methods gain traction, researchers are questioning the implications of synthetic data, which is in this review by Ale Mohammed and Domatab and Shumilov. Those are 3 review articles on these synthetic data sets and their role in machine learning. Will synthetic data ultimately solve the data access problem for machine learning? This workshop seeks to address this question by highlighting the limitations and opportunities of synthetic data. So this is definitely kind of an interesting topic, and we haven't talked too much about synthetic data in terms of its role in, just kind of speculating on its role in machine learning. But this is the website SynthData at ICLR. We're going to talk about what they're looking for here, the risks and limitations of synthetic data, new algorithms for synthetic data generation, new applications using synthetic data, using it for model training and evaluation, improving specific model capabilities such as reasoning, math, and coding, synthetic data to address privacy, fairness, and safety, evaluation of synthetic data quality and models trained on synthetic data, conditional and unconditional synthetic data generation, data access of federated learning and privacy-preserving methods, and mixing synthetic and natural data. So that's certainly something interesting, to think about. Okay, then there was this other workshop. This is still on Saturday. Self-improving foundation models without human supervision. Another workshop on machine learning for genomics and explorations, which they call ML Gen X. New frontiers in associative memories. Neural network weights as a new data modality. So this is kind of an interesting one, given some of the discussions we've had about Weight Watchers and some of the other tools having to do with neural network weights, focusing on that and training. The ongoing deep learning revolution of the last decade has brought about hundreds of millions of neural networks trained on diverse data sets. At the same time, the recent rise of foundation models has led to a rapid increase in the number of publicly available neural network models. On Hugging Face alone, there were over 1 million models, with thousands more added daily. As a result, the ample knowledge contained in the data, the abstraction learned via training, as well as the trained model's behaviors themselves are stored in the architectures and parameters of trained neural networks. Despite this massive growth, little research has been conducted into processing model weights, and they are rarely considered a data modality. This workshop aims to create a community around weights-based learning by bringing together the scattered sub-communities that already interface with model weights, with the ultimate goal of democratizing model weights as a proper data modality. So this is the website for the workshop. This is a workshop on weights-based learning. Let's see, speakers. Not familiar with any of them. Accepted papers. This is papers and posters. So this the first one is adversarial robustness and parameter space classifiers. There's equivariant neural function networks for transformers. There's adiabatic fine-tuning of neural quantum states. Model diffusion for certifiable few-shot transfer learning. And then integrating meta-trained hypernetworks with GBDTs and retrieval for tabular data. Then there were some posters, fusion of graph neural networks via optimal transport, finding stable subnetworks at initialization with dataset distillation, the space between unfolding symmetries and sampling, a model zoo of vision transformers, a model zoo on phase transitions in neural networks, and on and on. I mean, there are a lot of interesting things here. But yeah, this is another really interesting topic. Let's see. Then there was this other one, workshop on sparsity in large language models, or SLLMs. deep dive into mixture of experts, quantization, hardware, and inference. And then finally, the future of machine learning data, practices, and repositories. And then there were some other workshops on Sunday. Workshop on reasoning and planning for large language models. Emerging possibilities and challenges in deep learning for code. This I can't believe it's not better. Challenges applied deep learning. There is another similar workshop topic, like I can't believe it worked or something like that. Anyways, this is kind of cute. Then some other workshops here. AI for Math, ICLR 2025. AI for accelerated materials design. Workshop on spurious correlation and shortcut learning foundations and solutions. And then the workshop on world models, which is this one that I wanted to talk about because we've been talking about world models. So the abstract here is our workshop covers the widest range of topics related to world models, including understanding, modeling, and closely aligning with cutting-edge generative AI and broader applications such as robotics and embodied AI. We are glad to announce that 9 confirmed top-tier researchers, including the founder of World Models, have confirmed to attend in person as speakers and panelists. The workshop widely targets AI researchers, industry professionals, and students. Also topics such as generative AI, reinforcement learning, and related applications. So familiarity with recent advancements in both fields will be beneficial but not mandatory. So then they kind of go through some of the things that they talk about, kind of the application domains that might be of relevance here. In summary, our topics of interest mainly include, but are not limited to, understanding world rules, world model training and evaluation, scaling world models across language, vision, and control, world models in general domains, for the contributed paper section. Okay, so let's go to the workshop website. This is World Models at ICLR. So this kind of gets maybe into some of what they're trying to do here. This workshop explores classical world modeling backbones for understanding and modeling the world, such as transformers, RNNs, state space models, spatiotemporal modeling, and causality analysis. Building from these foundational topics, the workshop will also discuss the broader and evolving concept of world models for complex real-world prediction and simulation, like video/text generation, and more specific applications. Let's see. This workshop covers the widest range of world models topics, including understanding, modeling, as well as scaling with cutting-edge generative AI. And then they talk about sort of these different topics within world models, such as model-based reinforcement learning, causality, sequential modeling, simulation of the environment, diffusion models, video generation, foundation world models, 2D to 3D, robotics, and embodied AI. And then, they talked about these different types of topics, such as understanding world rules, exploring how world models capture environmental dynamics, causal understanding, spatiotemporal patterns, model-based reinforcement learning, and theoretical foundations for simulation and prediction. The second one is world model training and evaluation, strengths, limitations, and challenges of current modeling architectures, such as state space models, RNNs, and transformers, but also training algorithms such as autoregressive training, diffusion modeling, reinforcement learning, and normalizing flow. We talked about flow matching, we talked about diffusion modeling, we talked about reinforcement learning, not autoregressive training, but that's just basically autoregression, which we might talk about in an upcoming meeting. Then there's scaling world model prediction and generation across language, vision, and control. This is investigating how integrating visual, auditory, and textual data improves realism in world models. They have world models in general domains, exploring world models in robotics, AI, healthcare, natural and social sciences, and beyond, to improve prediction and decision making. Then there are, of course, benchmarks, data sets, and demonstrations about world models, such as environment simulation. So that's, that is pretty open-ended, actually. Yeah, so that's good. Looks like Morgan left. I know he was at the conference. It's a shame because I wanted to ask him about the world models workshop, but that's okay. So did we have any questions about that? Any comments?
I didn't have any questions about that, but I had questions about other conferences. Oh, sorry. Cheers. I had questions about other comments,
Okay.
other conferences ahead.
Oh, okay.
And even like I think I said something about A-Life.
Oh yeah.
And because I was going through my emails trying to find something about them, and we can continue talking about that, but just sort of like things that we're trying to do ahead.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through like the whole whatever that like Excel sheet stuff we used to do. I don't do that right now, but more like other things. Because there's a lot of things I've applied to a bunch of stuff, but I don't know what. Like, did the meta science thing happen? Is that still happening? Is A-Life happening? I feel like I missed so much listening about that.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to do A-Life this year.
Okay.
So I don't think we're going to do the meta science one either. So.
I got some email from them about like, I don't know if it's just A-Life and like reviewing stuff or program stuff. I don't know. I don't know. So that's why I'm asking them again. There's a few other conferences and things coming up. We can talk about. I feel like I'm kind of interjecting that, so I don't know how much we wanted to say more about.
Well, I think that's something that like I don't know. I mean, the A-Life deadline is pretty close. It's a couple weeks, and they usually want a full paper. So I wouldn't want to like I don't know if we can do anything. I don't think we have anything we can submit.
Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking, but like I know I haven't been around for a while. I don't know, I might do something with the program committee there or something, because I was following up on something. I don't know what I'll say about it right now. But more so, I didn't have a sense of like, I didn't know a paper we had ready to submit to it this year either, but I know I've been away. There are a few other conferences. I think I'll just post them in the Slack. One was about. I can quickly find one of them. One was actually about something about gaming, but gaming. There's one cooperative AI, which is in Turkey. That's about a call for practitioners and researchers. So if anyone's doing, I don't know about. Okay, there's one I'll post in the chat too about the one. This is the one I was thinking. Interactive Games and Postgraduate Research Conference. That's the submission deadline's a ways away, later in May, and like mental health and game and things like that. I'll post this in Slack right now. But I was thinking, I don't think Hussein's here, but for like board games VR or like interactive play, it just seems like there's stuff there. So if that's interesting, I know we're not really doing play in the lab right now, but Plot Twisters is essentially based all about that. and we were at the Inclusive Gaming Conference last year. And there's also a sort of a data and direction actual tie-in. Someone at UCSD was featured for some research on using games as ways to basically train, or not train, but evaluate certain models. I don't know if it was like LLM specifically. I don't remember the details right now. But using games as a like computer games or video games in this case, as a way to test for certain things. There's something there that I might submit to the conference at, and that is I only have an image of it, so I'm just gonna put it. I'm just gonna put it in here. I'm just putting it in the main one right now. But it's York St. John University, I guess, and we have a few things there. There's something else I wanted to say, but I'm not able to recall. I'll post things. They probably should be in the call for involvement one. I'll post something we call for involvement. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little scattered about that right now. Okay. Is there, outside of my own gibberish stuff, is there anything else that should be we should be paying attention to in directing people to work on it way, outside of the big obvious thing, which is the summer code, the summer cohort? Like that's obviously the main show for the next few months. But
right, yeah. Kind of working on for the Beacon conference and things, but you know, that's kind of early stages. And then we have maybe some other things this summer. I'm not really sure what's on the schedule. But yeah, I should put together like an action list or something, because you know, it'd be kind of nice to have that. We have the sheet of submissions and things, but you know, that's there isn't that much to review right now. So
yeah. And I don't like in terms of doing that, or if you want to talk about anything else summer wise, like let me know how I can best support that, because I know I'm kind of coming in. I have these other things here, and then I'm trying to sort out like what if anything needs to happen in or for the lab that I can facilitate. Let me know. I know I've been a bit away about that, but I'm here to engage whatever I can now. So yeah.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I know it's been. But congratulations on your completion of your program.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you? I mean, you've got. I guess you've got your degree already, or you?
Well, I have the declaration from the dean that I'm valid. Okay. Like I'm sanctioned. I'm sanctioned by the state, or the accreditation unit. I won't go there right now. Anyway, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to go to San Diego unless it's been such a tough year because I've had to cancel so many things, to be honest with you. Like it's been really, and I'm not going to talk about other things going on, but like, you know, I really, really, really intend to be in San Diego for graduation, which is in June.
Okay.
And hey, if anybody's watching this in San Diego, I'm trying to make up for a lot of you know, missed connections, and I'll be there hopefully for more than a few days. And well, to be, you know, I like San Diego. I've been there before. I had great memories there as a town, but then actually doing more with the university this time. That'll be in June. So thank you for that, Bradley. And yeah, like I'm kind of excited now because I feel like I'm kind of coming. I've been in a cage for like the better part of a year, like 7 to 8 months. I haven't had freedom to do a lot of things I wanted to do. So when we had the question earlier, video about stuff, it's like I kind of just dumped a lot of stuff, and like in particular, it's like 7 months of having to hold back on many things, and then finally being done with grad school and being done with a master's program, being done with that for now, and a lot of other life changes. It's great to I don't know, like a couple summers ago, I remember like I would go to the river and we'd have our Friday calls. I was like, I'm looking forward to that so much, with the projects and as we go on the summer and everything else, and having time to kind of be more robustly able to do things again is great. And so yeah, in terms of other things, I like future ahead things coming our way. There's that conference is another one, and I need to check my email. I don't expect that I got into something, but there might be a very fun. There's a few really interesting events coming up in the summer about like AI and philosophy kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then also some of the Echolopto. I'll try to post some of the Echolopto stuff here. Addie's sort of touring the country, I suppose, to do certain finding spaces where people want to talk about what he wants to talk about, what the group wants to do. So more about them too. I don't really know how to best talk about the group yet, because it's not quite. Plot Twisters is very much, we're designing a game. We're doing very specific stuff, and it's I don't feel comfortable like I'm with Echolopto, I guess, but also like I feel like I'm a newly invited person there, so I don't quite know how to fully talk about it. But I think there'll be a lot of fun things there. I would love to, and I know Addie is very interested in some of the leadership innovation stuff I'm talking about too. So I think there'll be some really fun things there. And as a general like thing, like if people have a topic they'd like to see covered in data and direction or the leadership stuff, or early career folks have questions, a lot of the articles I've put so far up on the leadership, from here to there, mentoring strategy and mentoring for innovation project blog Substack. A lot of the articles there are literally just early career folks asking me questions about stuff, and me like, yeah, let's just write something about this and put it out there because they're valid questions. And I think there's going to be more of that over the summer too. So at any rate, discussion series ahead, interviews ahead, and then hopefully some conferences, and definitely Google Summer as well. So I look forward to that.
That sounds great. Thank you, Jesse.
Yep.
Okay. So I wanted to get back to some of the things in the Slack. I know that Morgan's talked about neuroscience networks. So there's some things in neuroscience networks that were posted, some YouTube videos. This one here on the use of quantum technologies in network neuroscience. This one is BRAF2, a flexible, open source, reproducible, community-oriented, easy-to-use framework for network analysis in neuroscience. There's this video, how many types of causation should we consider in neuroscience? This is the Neuroscience and Philosophy Salon. This is beyond mechanism and extending causation. This one is, I guess, he posts LinkedIn posts and their papers within it. This is a network neuroscience paper or perspective on translational network neuroscience, 9 roadblocks and possible solutions. This is definitely, this is the Open Access Journal Network Neuroscience, and this is just talking about translational network neuroscience or ways to use network neuroscience in applied settings. This one here, revealing higher order neural representations with generative artificial intelligence. We talked about like representations and artificial forms of intelligence in the past few meetings. So they kind of focus on first order representations, higher order representations, and then the interaction between them. That's kind of an interesting paper. I would, yeah, we might go over the abstract of that actually. So this is actually Megan Peters is on this as an author, and this is okay. So the abstract reads: studies often aim to reveal how neural representations encode aspects of an observer's environment. So we're talking about neural representations, such as its contents or structure. These are what they call first-order representations, or FORs, because they're about the external world. So you have like a first-order representation that takes something in the external world and builds a model of it internally. It may include certain details, it may leave out other details. And it's a first-order representation because there's no sort of, it's not necessarily very symbolic. It's just kind of like a parts list, or it's a correspondence map. A less common target is higher order representations, or HORs, which are about FORs. So last time we talked about meta-learning in the last meeting. And we talked about like all this, there's all this work being done on meta-learning with respect to Bayesian approaches and with respect to reinforcement learning and all this other stuff. And what they're doing here is they're just basically taking representations and building these first-order representations, or proposing that you can build them as correspondence maps, and then have these HORs, or higher-order representations, which are about the first-order representations. So HORs, as opposed to being correspondence or being a model of something in the world, is a model of the content, stability, and uncertainty of those first-order representations. Higher-order representations of uncertainty appear critically involved in adaptive behaviors, including learning under uncertainty, influencing learning rates, and internal model updating based on environmental feedback. However, higher-order representations about uncertainty are likely to be direct readouts of first-order representation characteristics, so they're not like correspondence maps of the first-order representations. Those might be like second-order representations. So you could have a situation where you have like a first-order representation of this table in front of me with all the things on it of interest. And then I could make a correspondence map of that with the representation. And then, I'd have that as my internal model. It would be reduced in complexity. It would have like, selective features. And then maybe have a second order representation of that, where I might have like a model of motion, where I have like the physics of things on the table. So I had given a model of what's on the table, then I have this model of physics or model of motion, and I can use that as the second order representation. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about higher order representations, where you have maybe a model of the uncertainty of that representation or something else. So they're not readouts of FOR characteristics. Higher order representations instead reflect estimation processes, which may be lossy, bias-prone, or distortive. So lossy means that it can lose information, that, like, you can encode something in a way that loses information. So there's lossless encoding, which is where you encode something without losing any information. And then there's lossy encoding, which is where you lose information, but not enough to, be disruptive. But you may lose information that's necessary. There also may be bias-prone encodings, so those are where you encode things according to a certain bias in the observer, or distortative, which means that there's noise involved and that noise corrupts this representation, which may also incorporate estimations of distributions of uncertainty the observer is likely to experience. So this means that if, like again, we were talking about Bayesian likelihoods and things like that with respect to meta-learning, this is where you have, you're basically estimating how uncertain something is, or an object. So an object, if I look at a cup on the table, I may be uncertain as to whether it is a cup or it may be something else that looks like that. Or I may be uncertain as to the physics. How likely is it that this cup will tip over, or that if I apply a certain force, it'll tip over? And I can calculate uncertainty estimates for that. And it's all based on the observer and their experience. If they're, if the observer is experiencing something, what is that? It depends on the observer. Different observers are going to have different estimated distributions for uncertainty. And then, of course, in context. So if I know, the more I know about a certain setting, the less uncertain things are. But not always, because sometimes things are inherently uncertain, and so we have to calculate that. Well, some research has targeted neural representations of instantaneously estimated uncertainty, how the brain represents distributions of expected uncertainty remains largely unexplored. Here we propose a novel reinforcement learning-based generative artificial intelligence approach to explore neural representations of uncertainty distributions. We use existing fMRI data where humans learn to denoise their brain states to achieve target neural patterns, to train denoising diffusion generative AI models with reinforcement learning algorithms that learn noise distributions, similar to how humans might learn to do the same. We then explore these models, learn noise distribution, higher order representations compared to control models trained with traditional backpropagation. Results revealed model-dependent differences in noise distribution representations, with a reinforcement-based model offering much higher explanatory power for human behavior, offering an exciting path towards using generative AI to explore neural noise distribution higher order representations. So again, they're making this connection between meta-learning, or these kind of meta representations, higher order representations, and reinforcement learning, which we've talked about is something you can implement in the brain. People will argue that you can also implement Bayesian models in the brain. So when you have feedback, you can implement a Bayesian model. But reinforcement learning is also a feedback mechanism. So these are, basically brain inspired in some way. So you can link them to what's going on in the neuroanatomy, what's going on in the brain activity. All right, so that's that paper. That's a really cool paper. I like that. This one, Translational Network Neuroscience, is another good one. These videos are all good. There's some other videos. They don't generate the thumbnail, and I'm sorry about that, but you also have to click through for those. We won't explore those right now. There's this other meeting, ICTS. This is a meeting in India. This is a discussion meeting on neuroscience, data science, and dynamics of dynamical systems. This is, the Turing lectures will be delivered by Professor Gabriel Minlin from Buenos Aires on the topic of the physics of birdsong. And so this is a Turing lecture. So this is just kind of a, Morgan will post different snapshots of what's going on in the field. That's one of them. This is a talk by Anthony Zador from Michael Levin's YouTube channel. From the connectome to AI and back. Anthony Zador, of course, has done a lot of work on. He's different. He was involved, or he's been involved in NeuroMatch and that group. So, he's got some good ideas. I would check that out. And then, of course, this is the one that Morgan talked about with ZapBench. So that was what he was talking about. This is improving brain models with ZapBench. This is a Google research thing. You have a paper data sets, code, and tutorials. So this is where they're working with the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, Genelia's farm, and Harvard. And they've been working with groups there, and they introduced this tool called ZapBench, a whole brain activity data set benchmark with single cell resolution on the larval zebrafish. So this is the zebrafish brain here, to enable the development and comparison of more accurate brain activity models. So this is where Google's been working on connectomics, brain connectomics, and trying to improve our tools for this. So over the years, they've created maps in several species. They've worked on the fly brain that's been reconstructed in collaboration with Genelia Farm. They've been working on different parts of the fly brain. So they've worked on the mushroom bodies and some other regions of the fly brain. But these structural maps can only take us so far. So you have these connectomes where you're looking at connections between neurons. Like in the fly brain, they worked on high resolution imaging where they've been able to take the axonal connections between the neurons and visualize those and gain an appreciation for the connectomics of Narcissus and Drosophila. So, this is the scale, it's several thousand neurons. So it's a long haul to getting to humans. It's also a long haul to getting to like a working model of a brain where it can generate behaviors that are just like the organism that it's modeling. So we have these structural maps. We can recapitulate all the connections. We can't necessarily know how the connections are used or, the context in which they're used, what behaviors are generating necessarily. Sometimes you have specific circuits where you have a pretty good idea of the behaviors that are generated, but in something like a fly brain, you can't know, like in the mushroom bodies, for example, what combination of specific connections are activated to produce specific things. And maybe we'll never know that, but we would like to have a better idea of what those look like. So, we can do things like record large-scale brain activity and develop models from these observations, but it's hard to kind of make a really strong connection between these maps and then things like behavior or functional activity. To bridge that limitation, we required a whole brain data set of the larval zebrafish brain, which, there are a lot of nice developmental data sets of zebrafish because it's a model organism people worked on the embryology of and the larval development of, different stages of larval development. It's a very fascinating organism, and it's even more complex than what we find in the fruit fly and Drosophila. And it's closer to a mammalian brain in the sense that it's a vertebrate brain. So we have that 3-lobe structure. We can, kind of make more connections to the human brain this way. This data set features recordings of roughly 70,000 neurons. We are in the process of generating a comprehensive connectome for the specimen for which the activity data was recorded. This unique combination will, for the first time, allow us to directly investigate the relationship between the precise structural wiring and dynamic patterns in neural activity across an entire vertebrate brain. So we have a vertebrate brain that is tractable to this type of analysis. And so the ZapBench refers to Zebrafish Activity Prediction Benchmark. So this is the Zebrafish Activity Prediction, and then the bench is benchmark. So this is actually something they announced at ICLR. With the ZapBench open source dataset, researchers have detailed recordings they can use to build models of brain activity. And using the benchmark, they can quantify the accuracy of predictive models. So they talk about benchmarking brain models here. They talk about data-driven benchmarks in machine learning. This has driven progress in weather forecasting, computer vision, and language modeling. There's an existing effort called the Dynamic Sensorium competition, which has improved our understanding of how mouse visual cortex processes visual stimuli. But this only covers, in fact, less than 0.1% of the mouse brain. So this is a very, very small area of the mouse brain, and we know what it does, and we can benchmark it accordingly. But in ZapBench, they are basically dealing with almost the entire brain of a larval zebrafish. So this dynamic sensorium is the arXiv paper. There's a group here that has done this. The Dynamic Sensorium Competition for Predicting Large-Scale Mouse Visual Cortex Activity from Videos. So basically, they have videos that they show to the mouse, they record from the visual cortex, and then they can make these predictions, and then they use that as a set of benchmarks. So it's really interesting work. If we go up to this paper that they have here, this is ZapBench, a benchmark for whole brain activity prediction in zebrafish. This is the group of researchers here. And again, they go over everything from this promotional post in this paper. And then the datasets, codes, and tutorial. This is the ZapBench set of datasets. They have volumetric activity, segmentation, traces per segmented neuron, and then cell activity, which renders activity traces to visualize spatial relationships. These traces are then mapped onto a volumetric model of the brain where you have the activity and the segmentations. They segment out the neurons, and they map the traces to that cell activity. And then this is some of the interactive results. They just show for different behavioral contexts, they have like these different different contexts in the data set. They have these different aspects of gain, dots, flash, taxis, turning. So they have like all these different things that happen in behaviorally. Like taxis are these quick movements towards a stimulus. Flash, and I guess presenting a flash stimulus. Turning, position, open loop rotation. Dark, you have to go to the manuscript to know what these baselines are. But these are the benchmarks for these different things. So that's the idea. What they want to get is these graphs that show kind of a baseline, and then you can use you can look across different systems within zebrafish, or maybe artificial systems like artificial embodied agents for more. So they have code and tutorials here, interactive time series forecasting, metrics, trending evaluation, and data sets. So I think that's all for today. Thank you for attending, and have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.